Hello, my name is Paul Archer. Today, I'm incredibly excited to welcome Kate Nightingale to tell us, well, to let us into the minds of our minds and the minds of our customers and everything from there. Kate, do you want to tell us a little bit about you, a bit about your background and how we came to be on the call today?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So my name is Kate Nightingale. I'm a consumer psychologist. I work with a lot of really incredible brands, from absolutely bonkers founders that want to challenge the status quo of industry to innovative and maybe sometimes even more normal ones, global or national brands. Um, we do everything across brand strategy, customer experience, design across online and offline platforms. But basically, the principle is we take this super amazing behavioral science and we help brands to apply it so they have much better experience, much more effective marketing, way cooler strategies, and more importantly, so they can actually make a difference in the world and create a little bit better world. And as our purpose says, we are creating a better world by making brands more human. So needless to say, our name, Humanizing Brands, is kind of obvious, I guess.
Amazing. And how about you? So what's your background? How did you get into doing this?
Oh, long story short, I was always the type of child that was looking at people and was like really curious, like why they lie, why can't they just agree with each other? What is it about it? Why someone is sad? Why it's like, that kind of child. So, and I clearly ended up studying psychology. That's not a weird thing. But I always was very intrigued about how we as human beings kind of communicate ourselves, but not just through words, more through the nonverbal aspect. And then I realized that everything that we buy is a communication as well. The challenge is that that knowledge isn't then used by the brands to actually create amazing strategies, to amazing experience, products, designs, or anything like that. And that, the academic knowledge was kind of sitting there in the libraries and not really being used by the brands to better our lives as human beings, to better our experience of everyday life. And that was like pissing me off. That was my, my passion moment where I felt like someone needs to do it. So, so I first started applying psychology to fashion industry and then eventually kind of spread it into other product categories, but still those product categories that are intrinsically tied to our identity. So anything from fashion, beauty, homeware, all those kind of, things that we don't actually need, because you do not need 25 minimal pairs of shoes. You do not need 5 dresses. You do not need 5 different gadget phones, you tech guys everywhere. We do not need that officially for survival, but we do need that psychologically, emotionally. It fulfills other things. And what is that symbolism, that meaning, those internal demands and desires that we are fulfilling with all of those B2C products that are also so intrinsically tied to how we identify as human beings. Because, if you just kind of sell it in a functional way, it's not working. No brand can anymore sell it in purely functional matters. Functional benefits of a product, or even things like price or anything like that, those are just hygienic factors. So how do you differentiate yourself? This is where the psychology, this is where understanding of emotions, of senses, of desires, motivations, drivers, attitudes, beliefs, everything, of understanding our brain and how it works and the differences between subconsciousness and consciousness and how it features in our decision making. That's where the differentiation for brands happens. Not anymore in the product or service that they're offering, because that one can anyone do and copy. But it's that subtle, things that we cannot name. We cannot really, they're intangible, but this is where the value is.
So talk us through a couple of examples of how that works and I guess maybe how that doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of examples. Okay, so one of my favorite projects was working with Swarovski on their global store concept. And I love working on physical design. It doesn't matter whether it's stores, interiors, whether that's packaging, or whether that's even product or anything like that. Because the physical elements, we immediately understand that it has all of the senses. Whereas we don't necessarily understand that actually online digital experiences have also all of the senses. We assume they aren't there, but they actually are. We still activate all of the senses in our brain. And the senses are, I like to call them keys to our brain, because there's no other way to get into our brain than through our senses. Literally, not a single other way for anything from an external and internal world, also from within your body. You cannot get otherwise to your brain than through the senses. Now, scientists argue we have between 3 to 33 senses, and they keep discovering new ones. But the point is, once you understand the science behind, if I put that texture, people think that thing, and they do that thing, and they turn right as opposed to left, or they think that that price is more fair for that product as opposed to another. And designers don't know that. Architects don't know that. Brand managers don't know that. Scientists, however, have done that. So, for me, the passionate thing is where I am able to get that amazing science, then work with that designers and that architects and the brand teams and say, okay, so what do you want people to feel? How do you want them to move around the space? What do you want them to think in terms of the price perception, the value perception? How do you want them to interact with each other in the space? Because they know that. They just don't know which tools to use. So you kind of press the right buttons on someone's brain so they actually do it. And they feel amazing after that experience as well. That's where I love it. And that's exactly what we did with Swarovski. We challenged the designers, not this color, not that texture, not that, layout, not that wayfinding, not that placement of the product, not that placement of the price tag, and so on, so on. Not that direction of the lighting, not the type of lighting, not that color of lighting, not that brightness, not the dimness, but everything. And that's not difficult for me. This is something that's just normal. The science is there. There are millions of studies out there about it. But it's how do you use it so your experience, your brand, your product is just bloody amazing, and customer cannot argue that you are better than any other competitor. But the challenge happens is we don't sell to the same customers. Your competitor is going to attract a different customer than you are going to attract. A different psyche, different personality, different attitudes. Not just demographics even. Demographics are obsolete in customer segmentation. Like, to a certain degree they help, but they won't allow you to differentiate as a brand. And that's the challenge, because you need to use that psyche of your customers as a filter in terms of the tools that you're choosing. Because one texture will work for that type of personality, whereas another texture will work for a different one. And this is where the fun happens. It's like, when you start adding those questions to the process with the brand, they're like, oh my goodness, this is complex. Yeah, I know, but that's why you have us guys. We kind of getting that complexity. So you don't have to think, I need to choose between 6 textures. No, we'll tell you use this one because this is exactly what it's going to get you, combined with the lighting, combined with the music, combined with the scent, combined with something else. It's going to get you, in majority of your type of customers, the reactions and the thinking and the emotions that you want to get. That's the fun part. It's like when you start combining all of those things together, and then you're looking at people and they behave exactly as you predicted. That's the beauty of it. And you can do it. Anyone can do it.
And so, how can this apply to someone who's, building a brand, but they don't happen to have, a resident behavioral psychologist telling them exactly how to do the dimming of their lights? I mean, how can normal brand builders who are just on the day-to-day, on the coal face, trying to figure this out, how can they bake into what they do, an appreciation of their customers, their psychology, their behaviors, and how they can work more effectively with them?
Oh my goodness, there's plenty of knowledge out there. We're sharing as much as we can, so people can, know what to do with it. But we also, for example, developed things that are much more approachable for smaller brands, because I personally love working with smaller brands, because most of the times the founders are so bonkers, so cool, and they just want to challenge the industries, everywhere, right, left, and center, because they know things can be done better. And that's what I love about it. But I do appreciate that they don't have the budgets, to do elaborate things. But you don't have to have those budgets, It could be that you read a few good studies, or our simplified translation of a few good studies. It could be that you, sit us with someone like us for a few hours, and that's fine. It could be that, you work with, with experts like us for 3 months, for example, for a few hours a month, and that's fine, or it could be that you go and do our course, for example. So I was very adamant that I want to translate our strategic process into courses. And at the moment, the first one that we put out is to basically how to create your behavioral brand strategy, which is called Behavioral Brand Bootcamp. And, it's the same process that we use with brands one-on-one to create their strategy, but it's just a self-study online course, and I do appreciate not everyone has a knowledge, not everyone has an access to limitless funds and whatever else. And don't get me wrong, we're not expensive, but still, and that's why their solutions are there. Otherwise, just go and read a few studies, read a few kind of books about behavior, but also trust your own intuition, because if something doesn't feel right, it means it's not consistent for the brain. Now, let me give you an example. When you are opening someone's website for the first time, or when you are entering or thinking about even entering their store, there is this immediate feeling in you, which is either, I'm intrigued, I want to know more, or I don't know, something is off. I feel a little bit uncomfortable and squeezy and whatever, something, let me leave. And that feeling of something uncomfortable, I don't know what it's about, this is your subconscious brain that analyzed every single sensory detail within a fraction of a second and told you, they don't know who they are. They are confused.com. They keep messaging different things across smells and textures and colors and fonts and other things. And they're confusing you because they don't even know who they are by themselves. So you can't trust them as well. That's the challenge, is consistency on a subconscious level of your brand communication across different sensory modalities is indicative of consistency of your behavior as a brand, as a product, therefore a value, reliability, trustworthiness of your offering. It's also indicative of authenticity. Those are trust and authenticity are some of the biggest drivers of consumer behavior and choices at the moment, on top of price and quality, obviously, but that's basics, right? And that's the challenge. It's like, if you know that you're going to have that feeling and listen to your intuition and say, I don't like that font that the designer is choosing for my brand. Listen to it. You don't like it because you know it's not communicating what you wanted to communicate. Another simple thing is pop the design in front of a few of your friends and family members and ask them, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you're seeing it? It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to do elaborate consumer research on that. But if they say 80% of the things that are exactly the ones that you want to be associated with your brand, great stuff. Go ahead. This is your design, right? If they don't, oops, you need to go back to the drawing board. And go back to the drawing board is simple things. Like even just look at the color psychology. There's so many websites that have everything described about color psychology. And it's just look at those associations, and choose the colors that actually communicate the key value and the key characteristics of your brand. Because if that is not communicated, at least for the colors, everything else will go bazooka and the brand is not gonna sell as you want it to sell. It's as simple as that. So trust your intuition.
And do you have any examples of brands and colors that are particularly emotive and sort of changes the way that people think about it purely through the power of the color?
It depends.
Good
Now, honestly, my favorite answer to a question is it depends. Now, the reason for that being is it depends on what you want to achieve, right? Because if you want people to think you are vibrant and exciting and fun and joyful and cool and, you know the newest innovations and everything else, then of course you're choosing different colors. Then if you want, the first things to be you are trustworthy and reliable and, and you're still very intimate and friendly and approachable, but maybe not all this bonkers kind of cool, fun, exciting brand, So again, it depends. It also depends who you're selling to. It depends on the price level you're going to have as well. It depends, on a lot of other things. It also depends on the fact, do you want to be similar to your competitors and what people expect in a particular industry? Or do you want to on purpose challenge that perception? So one of my clients is Klarna. I worked on a few campaigns with them. And I actually was also on their event yesterday. And when I asked, their head of UK for Klarna about kind of that principle of actually challenging the common presumptions that we have around financial services, which is a very similar tactics you can use to challenge the common, very negative attitude towards sustainability that customers have as well, because sustainability is generally associated with guilt and shame and, I should kind of change my behavior, but I don't really want to kind of thing, So one of those things that they have done very successfully is simply choose different colors. I'm like, who said that financial services can be pink, It's that kind of thing. It's like choose also, the colors based on, do you want to fit in? Or do you want to tell everyone, I know a better way of doing something and I'm just going to do it however I feel I want, So that's also the challenge, that there's no black and white kind of solution to anything, especially when it comes to human behavior. It's like we are all so different yet so similar. There is, and you need to kind of define what you want to achieve as a brand, how you want to be perceived, who do you want to speak to, what is that relationship you want to have with them? How do you want them to interact with you? Once you know those various things, that's when your dictionary of design solutions is becoming smaller. So you don't have 2 color shades to choose from, not 20, or you have that type of fonts because they more, let's say, movement based as opposed to more robust. Right? And if you are more of a kind of forward thinking and free flowing type of brand, then more movement based fonts will be better, versus if you are a trustworthy, reliable brand where you need a more kind of robust, clear lines and clear kind of boxed up letters. All of those things, it's kind of common sense. I like to say psychology is common sense tested. It's as simple as that. So trust your intuition. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel like it's a brand that you want to communicate, it's not going to work. It's as simple as that.
Nice and easy. I wanted to kind of change gears a little bit and to kind of look into one particular area that I'm really interested in, which is, this idea of why people do things and what incentivizes them to do it. So if you're a brand and you want to get your customers to collaborate, to co-create, to sort of be a part of it, like how should they go about doing that? What is the main reason that someone will do something for what is, a big organization or a small organization in many cases? Why does that happen every single day? And how can a brand make sure more of it happens?
The best way to get consistency of willingness to co-create and collaborate is through building strong relationships. Now, incentives are lovely, but they will have a short-term effect. Meaning you can get them once, maybe twice. And then, if they don't have a good relationship, if they don't have amazing amount of commitment, love and passion and intimacy with your brand, and they're not feeling that, that your brand really represents who they are. These are just some of the key pillars of the model of consumer brand relationships by Suzanne Fournier. And, if they don't have those, it's not gonna work long-term. You're not gonna be able to use the same customer over and over again. They're not gonna continuously come back to you. They will use it a couple of times, 2-3 times, because it's cool, it's novel. And perhaps you gave them a discount, or you gave them a gift, or, you gave them an early access. Oh, great. But then they're gonna get bored, because they don't feel like they're getting enough back commitment, because they don't feel like you're sharing enough back as a brand intimacy, because they don't feel that the values and the personality actually aligns with their own values and personality. And that's the basic principles of self-connection, or basically stemming from something called self-congruence theory, where generally, if a brand has a similar personality and similar values to the customers, it strengthens the relationships, engagement, loyalty, lots of other stuff, and obviously the frequency of buying and other elements like that. So, that's the challenge, but, it is a mutual relationship. That's the problem, which still majority of the brands are forgetting, or they're really good at that at the beginning when they're small, and then they lose it in a process when they become more than 50 people and so on. It's that mutualness of a relationship, or frankly, let's be honest, illusion of mutualness of that relationship, that is driving the consistency of engagement from our customers. Not the fact that you're going to give them a discount. Don't get me wrong, it will work, but they won't even want to use that discount unless they are so attached to you in the relationship with you. Because, so what that you're giving me a discount, but I don't want to lose instead of commit or invest an hour of my time, because I know I'm not going to get anything more out of that going forward. I'm not going to get the value that I want, because perception of value is not tangible. You can get a value because, you're going to have a sensation of pride because you have co-created a product. Okay, you can get a value because you're going to get a commission for that co-creation of the product as well, occasionally, like Lego ideas, right? But you're also going to get, recognition in your community, in your social network, right? So your actual social currency, for example, will increase. Or you can be extremely pragmatic. And if you're an influencer, for example, or any other kind of expert, you're also not going to think personally about it. You're also going to think what it benefits me as in a business. So it's, all of those kind of elements need to be considered. So don't just think about kind of tangible incentives. What are those intangible incentives, both short-term and long-term? That's the problem. It's like you can't just think either short-term or either long-term. The strategies need to align.
And if you were to start a brand from scratch today, what are the things that you would bake into it in terms of the relationship building parts that possibly doesn't happen with most brands when they start?
Again, it depends on the brand.
Very good point. Now,
yeah, all the time, because that's the thing. All of those strategies are important and should be invested into, but the level and the intensity and therefore the types of manifestations or the frequency of the manifestations of the application of those different strategies is going to be dependent on the type of brand you are. So partially, one major thing, really set out your personality, like really set out your personality as a brand. really clearly set out your values as a brand. Clearly understand what you are selling, because you are not selling a product or service. You are selling emotions, you are selling relationships, you are selling fulfillment, you are selling self-actualization, you are selling bettering the world, whatever it is that you think you are selling. And oh, by the way, you are doing it by selling shoes, you know? It's kind of, it's just a tool, right? Once you kind of have those things, then it will be, so, okay, so if you're really fun and energetic and vibrant and crazy and bonkers type of brands, and very innovative and everything else, then perhaps, you need to more invest in things like intimacy, those kind of more softer, the emotion-based aspects of relationship building, as well as commitment. But commitment you can do through fun events, things like scavenger hunts that a lot of sneakers brands, when they do limited editions, tends to do. Amazing, works really well. But if it was a bank doing scavenger hunt, and their brand is very trustworthy and reliable, maybe a little bit innovative, but quite kind of, consistent and basic and very robust and other things like that. But it's nothing to do with being bonkers or crazy, or it's not your best friend next door and other bits and pieces, then the scavenger hunt doesn't work, right? So strategies are extremely heavily based on your proper brand strategy. But so many times I haven't seen good brand strategies. So, that's the challenge, right?
And whose job is it to do the brand strategy? Is that the founders? And the
Mine.
Well,
No, I'm joking. So if you're setting a brand by yourself, or with co-founders and stuff like that, yes, it's you, but with proper guidance. Because unless you have created robust brand strategies previously in your jobs or whatever else, you will miss a lot of points. And also because you are too close to your brands and what you're trying to create, you will miss a lot of strategies. So unless you have a proper brand experts within your co-founders, I would always go to someone else, because the strategy is your foundation. Once you have that strategy, every other decision is easy. You just go, is it consistent with our strategy? Is it consistent with our personality? That's our, so think about your brand as a human being. Will I dress like that? Will I talk like that? Will I hang out with these people? I.e., would I do a brand partnership with that brand? And so on, so on. It's super easy then. It's not a rocket science. You don't have to think, should I use blue or red? Easy, right? I'm cool, bonkers, determined, fun, passionate, red, of course. It's not really, a rocket science. It's like, think about your brand also a little bit more like a human being, but you need that foundation, because that's the biggest challenge. And every investor, every investment company will tell you exactly that same thing. They always see, I think I was speaking with one of the investment companies, True Global, and one of the ladies over there that kind of deals with reviewing brands. She said more than 80%, if not more than that, brands that try to go for investment don't have brand strategies, and they don't want to invest in those brands, because that's the problem. It's okay to manage a brand when it's small, and then when it's only you co-founders and you have some strategy in your heads. Now, that's assuming that co-founders think exactly the same. And my experience working with a number of different co-founders is there's always discrepancies in how they actually view the brand. I just went for an almost 3-hour brand strategy workshop with 3 co-founders. Almost aligned, but there's nuances where they didn't align. And those nuances created the best solutions. But you need to go through that workshop challenges. You need to, question yourself. You need to make those discussions. Once you have that, then you give that file to someone else, the next hire, the next marketing head, the next 10 people that you hire, and they know. You give it to the agency that's supposed to design something, and they know. There's no question, there's no over interpretations of things, and therefore you are guaranteeing yourself consistency. And we already said consistency is king for the brain. You need to have that consistency. The biggest challenge where the brands lose value is when people do not know what the brand is about, who the brand is, what it stands for, what it's actually trying to achieve, what is its purpose, its vision, where is it trying to go? What are the absolute no-nos? We are not doing that. We are not using that word at all. We are not agreeing with this. We don't follow those guys, and so on, so on. Because the no-nos sometimes even say more than anything else. When you have that, you don't have to sit there on hours-long meetings to try to analyze your 20, 50, 100, 200 people's work, because their work is naturally consistent with your brand, because their brain is already influenced, is already marinated within the principles that you're trying to achieve. Better yet, if you have an office and you also design an office according to those principles, then their brain naturally will go in the right boxes in the brain, because the right color will woke up that association, and another kind of symbol that you're using will woke up this one. And if you have sofa spaces and dogs running around the whole office versus you don't have that, it will walk up different ways of thinking, more abstract as opposed to more rigid, and so on, so on. You need to also take advantage of influencing your employees in exactly the same way as you can influence your customers, and then it's not an issue. Then solutions that your team, your agencies will come up with will be naturally consistent with your brand.
And how do you see kind of a brand strategy manifesting itself? Like, in terms of, is this a document? Is this a slide deck? And then how have you seen great companies and organizations continually bake that into what they do beyond what you've just said about the office? Is it on the wall? Is this something they engage with every month, every quarter, the team collaborates on? I'd love to know some of the tips that you've got around this.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, initially, the brand strategy takes form of the document, right? Then this is translated into the brand design. Brand design is naturally going to infiltrate your brain and will create consistent solution. Then it goes to tone of voice. It goes to behaviors. It goes to the way you're communicating your brand on social. It goes to the way you're communicating your brand internally, whether you have an internal newsletter, way of writing emails, that ridiculous idea, of doing something on a Friday afternoon with your whole team, the way you coming up with, internal conferences for your team, that way you designed your meeting room in the offices, because it could be a ball pool as opposed to a boardroom table, right? And trust me, better ideas come from the ball pool than the boardroom table. Or you choose to go paintballing, or instead of kind of going and drinking yourself to almost unconsciousness, as part of the team collaboration. And who you collaborate with, what kind of campaigns you choose to do, how do you guys talk to each other? What are the incentives and benefits that the employees are getting? Okay, fine, healthcare and whatever else, but how about we give you, money for a facial once a month? That says something. Versus how about we give you money for for mental health solutions once a month, and so on, so on. Behaviors, actions, language, design, interactions between people, what type of leaders you are choosing and how they being led, how they leading their teams. All of those things matter. All of those things is a communication, the same way as you as a human being communicate not only with how you look, not only with how you speak or what you are saying, but also with, who do you hang out with? Do you choose to go to the cocktail bar, or do you choose to go and, and I don't know, learn crochet with your friends? And, I'm making this up right now, but it says something, it communicates clear values, right? There is obviously strategy to it, and it needs to kind of, be thought through, and it needs to be based on that overall strategy document. But it's quite easy to do once you just allow yourself to also think intuitively, because, what comes first will naturally be what is consistent, because as I said, your brain is already influenced by that dog anyway.
Well, I always find it really interesting because I completely agree in that so many people think that your brand is your logo, the colors, the things that show there, but actually your brand is your reputation. They are synonymous and they're one and the same. And so, in fact, everything you just said there is just running a good business. Like your brand strategy is how would you run a business that you want to be proud of, and that the people that work for you want to be proud of, and the customers who are your customers want to be proud of and tell other people about. Therefore, it is your reputation. So they are so important, and it's baked into every single thing you do, isn't it?
Yeah, because whether you look at elaborate business and scientific studies on brand equity and things like that, or whether you just kind of speak to to an average customer, what they're going to tell you is what the brand is what it means for them. What do they associate with it? What does it give them? How does it make them feel? What are the moments in their life that they reach for that brand, and how does that brand improve those moments in their life? That's what that's what's the value, the equity of the brand, right? That's why we buy those brands. We don't buy them because we actually need their products, like, okay, you might buy a washing powder, but no one told you need to buy that most expensive one over there, right? You can buy the cheapest one because it does the job. But it's that symbolism, that meaning, that fulfillment of those more psychological, emotional needs that we have is what differentiates the brand. This is the brand value, the brand equity, not the functional benefits or anything else. And that's the problem as well, because it's so intangible that, that for a lot of people, it's so hard to kind of grasp it, because it's so conceptual, but at the same time very complex. And it's super hard to measure, pretty much impossible. So obviously, what's my ROI versus my investment? Thank you very much. It's like, yeah, no, sorry. I'm like, we can't really properly measure brand value or brand equity or brand loyalty or brand authenticity. Like, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of measurements, but they just not getting to it properly, and it's that thing. It's like, maybe if you ask customers, will you be able to survive without us for the next 2 weeks? What if we just disappeared from the surface of the air and you could never buy from us? How would you feel? Like, maybe if you ask that would be probably the best measurement ever.
Well, I think the best measurement, in my opinion, is the number of people that come through word of mouth, because nothing tells you that you're doing a good job of everything throughout the journey of having not only an amazing product and experience and reputation, all of those things baked in, is will someone actually tell someone else about what you're doing? And if that's the case, then you're doing it well. And if it's not the case, you need to go back and work on those pieces there. We kind of have a theory that there's the accountant marketer, or just the accountants, and they are the killers of brands. The number of brands that have been killed by accountants who come in and say, well, I can't attribute that behavior there, so I'm going to go and do something which I can attribute, like a Facebook ad or something like that, instead of investing in something which will build that reputation, and that reputation will then lead to long-term brand love, to value, to word of mouth. And that word of mouth is not only free, but it's exponential as well, which makes it just a far, far better investment there coming across the board there.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. But the key word in what you said is long-term, right? And that's the problem. It's like a lot of the times, when you think about the brand or that accountant or whatever else, or the CEO of the brand, we still, unfortunately, most of the time see that focus on short-term gains without kind of, looking at that principle of long-term gain as well, right? And you can combine the strategies for both, but that's the thing. Like, you need to think about both. And just because something it's hard to measure or not as easily understandable, or it's not going to benefit you in 2 months versus 6 months or 10 or whatever, does not necessarily mean that it's not valuable in investing, because precisely as you said, it might not lead to sale in 2 days, but it might lead to 10 different sales within let's say next 6 months, right? Because precisely what you said, it's that kind of incremental element. This, you tell one and another one tells another 3, and so on and so on. And it's, and it's constantly going to add. And that's the beauty of it. But that also means that you sometimes just need to trust and risk.
Yes. And it's not about acquiring customers, it's about building relationships with those customers. And you mentioned a framework earlier about the kind of like the brand customer relationship. I'd love to double click in that and learn a bit more, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So the psychologist that created it is called Susan Fournier. And if you just kind of Google Susan Fournier, consumer brand relationships, the scientific study will pop up there. It's super easy. It's very nice, very friendly to use for an average person. You don't have to be a scientist. Some scientific journal articles are just like, wow, I even get lost occasionally. So yeah, no, but this is very useful model.
And what's the summary?
So the summary is you have 6 key pillars of relationships that should be invested into. Some of them I mentioned, things like intimacy and commitment and self-connection. And basically, the more you're kind of investing in those strategies that sort of fulfill each of those pillars, the more your brain creates biases in perception of that brand. And we love biases because those biases mean, for example, that your product is better than the competitors. Not necessarily, you just have a perception that it's better than the competitors. Or, oh my goodness, this event is so amazing. Your competitors did 10 times better events if you look at it objectively. But because you have so much love and passion and it's so cool and I can do exactly what I imagined I wanted to do with you guys, and I love you so much, and it was so much fun, and I'm so grateful that I could have co-created a product with you. It's not gonna get sold anyway, but it was really fun. And then you kind of perceiving it as something way, way better than it actually objectively is. Those biases are what is also creating your brand value, your brand equity. It's how your customer base is perceiving you versus someone else's. That's the challenge, because you are just targeting yours. And if your group, your type of personality of customers, their values, their lifestyles, everything else, is having all of those biases, that means they have a great relationship with you. It's exactly the same with human relationships, up until people mess up too much, right?
Well, there's a lot to be said about how brands, brand personality. We talked about that. We talked about they are, in essence, they are kind of like people. They're in a sort of
anthropomorphism. Yeah.
Not to be able to speak well on that, but the approach that we have relationships with them. They do well, they do badly. We're proud of them. They've got reputations in the same way that every human does.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, yeah. And definitely, I don't know if you've seen, but the level of anthropomorphizing brands over the last few years have been going crazily. But I'm not actually surprised because there have been a number of research showcasing that people with higher social isolation and loneliness are actually much more naturally attracted to anthropomorphized brands. Also, utilizing anthropomorphization that could be, even things like creating mascots, right, for brands. So obviously everyone has been doing it recently, or even things like, using first person descriptions for products. So I am so comfy and you can just chill on me and hang out with me and watch a TV together. I'm talking about a sofa, right? Sort of thing. All of those kind of strategies will also make you perceive things like, for example, sustainability and corporate social responsibility actions as actually more effective, more positive, and will lead to higher loyalty, engagement of the customer, purchase intentions as well, and word of mouth, positive one, of course. So a lot of kind of studies have been showcasing it. And since the pandemic hit, actually, there have been newer studies about around anthropomorphism that showcases that it's actually even more effective now with the type of mindset that the customers have. So needless to say, those brands that applied it over the last 2 years have been definitely reaping the rewards.
And is there a way that brands can segment those customers and maybe speak differently to them in different ways? That, like, should we be segmenting our CRMs based on personality types?
Oh, yes, thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, personality is the best way to actually personalize someone's experience. However, in terms of segmenting your customers, you have to bear one thing in mind. The same way as we as human beings tend to create better relationships with people that are similar to us in personality and values, it's exactly the same way as we are naturally attracted to the brands that have similar personality and values to us. So whether you try it or not, your customers will have extremely similar personalities across the board. There will be small differences in their personalities, depending also on your brand proposition and general kind of, product offering as well. So, certain brands, for example, will be targeting people that are across the board of a dimension called openness to experiences. So this is one of the big 5 personality model dimensions. So there's 5 key dimensions, right? So people that are extremely open to experiences will be those that will constantly try new things. They get bored very easily and they are less loyal naturally to brands. So they constantly need to have some innovations, new products, new solutions, really cool events, new ideas, new services, and other bits and pieces like that. Whereas people that are much lower on that dimension will prefer routines, rituals. Please do not change the fabric on that t-shirts that I buy every 6 months, because otherwise I'm gonna scream, sort of thing, right? So like, let's say Lululemon, for example, they target people across the board. They have limited edition collaboration type of, collections, which are unique, different, a little bit more vibrant, more kind of also targeted at people that are a little bit more extroverted as opposed to kind of more introverted. Whereas their standard collection, which never changes, except occasionally they might add onto it, but you have exactly the same leggings, exactly the same bra, exactly the same t-shirt, exactly the same colors, nothing changes over there, the fabrics don't change. That one will work very nicely for someone that's lower on openness to experiences, right? So for some brands, certain dimensions will be the ones that will actually be more of a differentiating factor between the segments. Whereas for others, it could be something completely different, right? So it could be, agreeableness, for example, or it could be locus of control. So locus of control is another individual difference, which indicates where we place control over our lives. So people that have internal locus of control believe that they are in charge of everything that happens in their life, and everything happens because of them, and whether it's good or bad. Whereas people that have external locus of control place the control over their life to external forces. That could be government, God, other people, luck, or whatever, right? So it's a different way of communicating, different experiences for those people. And you can have brands that targets people across the board, but you can equally choose to only target people that are a little bit more internal, a little bit more external. And it's your decision which one you want to target. Even if you have already existing customer base, you can still start changing and, you know, subtly removing some of your customers from certain segments. But yes, definitely creating segments based on personality differences, not only demographics or lifestyle or anything like that, more personality, attitudes to certain issues. For example, that let's say that issue is your key USP. So obviously a lot of brands, for example, you know, are trying to drop in sustainability into their, you know, into their USPs. Doesn't work anymore. Hygiene factor by now. But still, you know, it still worked to a certain degree. But you can, for example, you know, have segments based on the level of awareness around sustainability, or the attitudes to an issue, or something else, right? So your segments are divided based on what is important to you as a brand, your USPs, your unique proposition, your personality as well, and things like that. Because there's no one way of dividing the segments, but there is definitely way of personalizing the communication, the offering, the, you know, the newsletter, the website design, everything to the particular segment. And that's not difficult to do, but still there isn't enough of good tech solutions to do it properly.
So you're not saying that we should be running disc profiling on all of our customers. You're saying that there are proxies that we can use. So if I'm reading this right, playing it back to you to make sure I've understood it. So let's just say I run a company that does lots of new releases all the time. We could analyze the CRM to find the person that always buys the most innovative, cutting edge one, and be like, right, okay, that person is high on the openness to experience spectrum. They should be segmented other than the other person who buys the same thing every single time and get different messaging. It's not really about their personality, it's about their behavior, but the behavior is being caused by the personality. Is that right?
Yeah, so basically everything, you know, all of our behavior, all of our decisions are being caused by obviously a lot of different things, but personality is one of the best predictors of consistent behavior. And that's the key that we want, because a lot of the other individual differences, a lot of kind of environmental circumstances-based influencers will only cause particular behaviors, but it won't cause the same behavior over, you know, a set period of time. Whereas personality is the only part of our psyche that's consistent. You know, if someone doesn't behave consistently across different times when you meet them, I suggest you to run, because they probably be a psychopath or a sociopath. So, you know, so that consistency is key for us, again, over here in the customers. And yes, you can either give them a questionnaire, you can look at what they're purchasing, how often are they talking to you on social media. You can also analyze the words that they are using. You can also analyze the music that they are listening, and so on, so on, so on. There is crazy amounts of cool science on analyzing personality based on behavior, based on consumer choices, consumption, purchases, everything, you know, rather than necessarily kind of giving you a questionnaire, although that tends to be the easiest solution.
And so is the problem the ability to analyze the data, or is the problem the lack of data? So most brands who'd be listening to this thinking, well, I don't know what music they listen to. I mean, I have purchase data, and that's at best. Occasionally, I ask someone to leave me an NPS score, and I only get 2% engagement on that. You know, is this just that there's just not enough data out there? And if we had all the data in the world, people would know what to do with it, or is it's a double-sided problem?
Now, you know what's the biggest problem? People don't know what to do with, this is the group with that personality, this is the group with that personality, but what the heck does it mean? What strategy should I do? How can I change my tone of voice so it still is within my brand personality, but is more attractive and more engaging to that personality versus another. How should I change the offer? Should I give them a discount or a gift? You know, how should I do? That knowledge is lacking. It's the translation of knowledge, of insight that comes from the data into actionable strategies, solutions, designs, and everything else. That's the biggest gap. That's why I do what I do, because the knowledge is there, data is there, insight is there. But what the heck do I do with it? How do I adjust my strategies? How do I change my design of the website or the packaging or something else? How do I speak differently? You know, what type of customer service associate should I hire so my 5 different segments are, you know, addressed properly? Or how do I kind of inform the AI that is speaking to my customer through the chatbot? You know, that is the problem. Translation of that knowledge into real life solutions. That's the biggest issue. This is where problems start. This is where mistakes starts. This is where you lose customers, not insight and data. That's never a problem. It's there. But what do I do with it? How do I change the stuff? Because designers are not taught that. Marketers are not taught that. Like, they're starting to, but not enough. You know, that's the problem. It's like, you know, I go into something and, you know, someone tells me that campaign didn't work. And I'm like, of course it didn't work. I just looked at it for 30 seconds. You used wrong words. You placed the, you know, the sentence in the wrong spot in the image. The model had bad facial features that are not consistent with your personality characteristics, and her emotional expressions and body position was avoidant as opposed to approachable. It took me 30 seconds, and you've just wasted £250,000 on your advert.
So and again, just make sure I've got this right, play it back to you. So if a brand, like if you're Nike and you have, you know, thousands of different segments, because loads of people buy Nike. It's not just like one core group of it. The problem is very hard, because you then have to understand who it is, and then you have to have different sort of brand strategies for each segment, if that's right. But for the majority of the brands, this is probably not a massive problem if they have a really clear brand strategy, because they're not trying to speak to 5 different personality types. They are trying to speak to their personality type, and until they have nailed that and absolutely saturated that personality type, that demographic, that target market of the kind of people that they know that they show up for and they help solve problems for in their lives, then they shouldn't need to worry about those things. They just can be laser focused on that, and if they do that well, they'll never spend $250,000 on a dodgy TV ad, because they'll be building for the people that they intimately know. Is that right?
It depends. Okay. So when you're a new brand, yes, a lot of the times you will be starting to speak to one group, and you won't necessarily fully know what that group is. Because, you know, you will predict majority of it still, because obviously people respond to a brand that's designed similarly to their personality and so on. But eventually what's going to happen is within that overall bigger group, you're going to start seeing small differences. And you mentioned 5 segments. 5 segments, 3 to 5 segments is standard for a small brand. Nike probably has something like 30, if not more. You know, also it's going to depend on the level of personalization you want to introduce and what solutions you have to do that, right? But if you don't want to go that way, if this is too complex, if this is too much money, if this is not the best investment at this time for your brand, focusing on your strategy, on your personality, on your values as a brand, and speaking only around those will naturally attract like-minded customers. And then what's going to happen is that customer will have an illusion of personalization, because they will feel as if you are speaking just to them. Not necessarily the case, but it will feel like that. Because, you know, the language will be just right. the the fact that you respond to them quickly, to their comments on social media, and you respond in a much more personal and intimate manner will be just right. The fact that you don't have a scripted way of answering customer emails will be just perfect, and so on, so on. And it's that illusion, that threshold where it's just right level of illusion, where it feels personalized. That's where you need to get. But that stems precisely from what you said, Paul, being really clear about your own brand strategy. You cannot do it without that.
That makes sense, and that sounds somewhat less overwhelming as well. Just get a clear strategy, show up for those that you need to do, and do what you need to do. That feels intuitively right, which I think is where we started this conversation. So it feels like a great place for us to end this. Kate, this has been really, really interesting. I found it fascinating and highly enjoyable. I say massive thanks for your time, and hopefully this is of value to all the brand builders out there. Just one more question: if you could choose one book that you think every brand builder should read to kind of illuminate the fundamental principles of how all of this kind of behavior psychology can show up, which one would it be?
So the book that I actually love the best, I believe it's the best business and also personal development and leadership book ever. It's Legacy by James Kerr. It's basically about All Blacks, so the New Zealand rugby team, strategy that they've built up. And obviously, I don't know if you guys know everyone or not, but All Blacks are still the most successful sports team, not just rugby team, sports team in the world. And it's based on that strategy. So James Kerr, who is a journalist, he just basically took those pillars of that strategy and then discussed that, what All Blacks did, but also compared it against strategies that various business leaders, military leaders as well are employing. And it really kind of explains amazingly how to build incredible teams, incredible culture, how to kind of create incredible messaging as well. It just, and even if it's just for you personally, to kind of become more self-aware and, and apply some of those strategies to you, honestly. And it's super easy to read. It's like, it was written in a very nice way. So it's like you can sit one afternoon and it's done.
That sounds brilliant. I'm going to check that out right away. I've never heard of it as well. So I'm looking forward to digging into that. So that's James Kerr Legacy. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I read it like 3 times already.
It must be good. Kate Nightingale, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Paul.